All right, I'm gonna start off with a dumb question, but I gotta ask everybody.
It's all right.
What's your name and where are you from?
Marian, Marian Cocke, Cocke. One chicken with a quiet E.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background, how you got involved in medicine?
In medicine, well, I remember being I was born in Fort Benning, Georgia. My dad was regular Army. I was born in Fort Benning, and I went to the hospital one day with my mother. I was 5 years old to see a friend who had a baby. And I had to sit out in a waiting room, and a nurse came by, and she said, "What are you doing out here, little girl?" And I said, "I'm waiting for my mother to come out." And she said, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" I said, "I'm going to be a nurse." That's all I ever wanted to be. And I practiced nursing for 60 years. I was a nurse for 60, actually a little over 60 years, including 60 at Baptist Hospital and 10 years working for a doctor.
It was a shame they knocked that place down.
Yeah,
I remember that.
it really tore me up.
So how did you come to meet and ultimately, I guess, treat Elvis Presley?
Well, Dr. Nick came to me one day and he said, "Is the suite available?" And I said, "It is." And he said, "Well, Elvis is sick and I need to bring him in." I said, "I don't really want Elvis on this floor." "Why not?" I said, "Well, I have 52 patients up here, and I see all of them every single day, and those that are sick, I see them twice a day. Those that are really sick, I see them twice a day." And I said, "I'm afraid it's going to be too much confusion and too much turmoil." He said, "Miss Cocke, I promise you won't have a problem with it." I said, "If you're sure." So I met him and loved him immediately. Who wouldn't? He was being shaved. Sitting up on the side of the bed being shaved, and I walked in, and he introduced me to Joe and whoever else was in the room. I don't even remember other than Joe. And so we stood there for a few, and he said, "Do you know who this is?" I said, "I know who he is." So then after the interview, after I met him, everybody got ready to leave. Vernon was there, and so they were all ready to leave. And Joe said, "Elvis, we need to see about private duty nurses for you." And he said, "I'm going to talk to Miss Cocke first. We'll decide." So about 1:30 that day, he said, "What do you want me to do about private duty nurses?" And I said, "Honey, that's entirely up to you. What do you want to do about private duty nurses?" He said, "Well, I'll have them if you want me to, but I want you to be the one to take care of me." And I said, "Then save your money. And I'll just assign my 3 to 11 charge nurse to take care of you and my 11 to 7 charge nurse to take care of you." He said, "Okay." So that's how it started.
What year was that?
1975. It was. Let me see. He was 42, and it was
40.
1975 on January the 9th. He had just turned 40.
Okay. Well, did you ever stay at Graceland overnight or anything?
For 6 months.
You did? Where did you stay?
I shared Lisa's room.
Oh,
He moved a day bed in there, and he said, "The day bed is for Lisa. You sleep in the big bed." I said, "Lisa sleep in her bed. I'll sleep in the day bed." I got in that big bed one night and had a mirror in the top of it, and I laid down. There was an old lady up there looking out at me, and I got out of that bed in a hurry. I said, "I'm not sleeping in this bed."
Well, I've interviewed a lot of people that have known Elvis over the years, like Red West, Sonny West, a lot of other people. They always talk about Elvis's generosity. Did you ever witness this?
To a fault.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I can tell you a lot about it. He was used and abused by many people. Many people asked him for stuff, got mad at him about if he'd give somebody something and they hadn't given it to them. And he told me this himself. And he, as far as I was concerned, he was used and abused by so many people, including a lot of people that were there. And but he was generous to a fault. The second time I nursed him, the first time I nursed him, he gave me a beautiful diamond cross. And the second time I nursed him, when I went there that night, he said, got to the hospital that night, and he said, "I've got a car coming for you tomorrow." And I said, "I don't need a car, I've got one." He said, "Well, hell, give it away then. I've got one coming for you." And I said, "Elvis can't drive but one car at a time, honey." "Well, give it away then if you want to, but it's coming tomorrow." So it was a white Grand Prix, and very nice, and I enjoyed it. And later on, several years later, my sister needed a car, and was going to get a new car. And I said, well, I don't need but one car. We already got two, so just take this. So I gave her a white Grand Prix. And then when she died, she wanted to know if it was okay for her to give it to my brother. And so what she did was she took it and sold it, but I said, just don't tell them who it came from.
Well, I've also heard that Elvis was a big prankster. He would like to joke around with people. I think it was Sonny that was telling me one time they gave all of the employees $10 gift certificates for McDonald's. Did you ever witness something like this?
No, he told me about it though, and but you know, he was funny and he was a prankster, and but he was a wonderful man.
Do you have a favorite Elvis song?
I Remember You.
That's your favorite one? Oh yeah, I think I remember Colin doing that.
He sang it for me last night.
Well,
and I think later he sang Tish's favorite song, probably.
Probably. He does everybody's favorites.
I know he does. He's such a nice guy. Colin is just tremendous. I love to hear him sing.
Did you ever get to go on tour with Elvis? If so, what
I
was
never
that
went
like?
on tour, but I went on some trips with Elvis.
You did?
We went to Vegas. We went to California. It was real funny.
Was he just mobbed by fans everywhere he went, or was he able to get places?
No, actually, he was. The guys always went around. About 4 of the guys went with us when we went to Vegas, and it was a nice trip, and we had a good time. And it was funny when we got ready to leave. He said the plane was being gassed up. It should be ready by the time we got to the airport. And I said, my daughter was with me, and I said, Katie and I have to be gassed up too. We're hungry. And he said, oh, there's going to be food on the plane. So they had 2 big trays of sandwiches with deviled eggs and all this stuff on it. And he and Linda Thompson and my child and I wiped it clean. And then there was another tray full of fresh fruit, which we took back to Graceland. I said, what about the guys? He said, oh, they've already eaten. And so we had food on the plane for us, and we got on the plane to eat. And he said, well, we're so close to California, I think we'll just fly to California. I said, honey, I have to go to work in the morning. I'll get you back. So we flew to California and went to his home up in, where was it? We didn't go to the honeymoon house. We went in the Chino Canyon. Went to his home in the Chino Canyon, stayed there for about an hour. I kept saying, honey, I got to go to work in the morning. I'm going to get you back, Miss Cocke, I'm going to get you back. So we got back on the plane, I don't know what time, but we got into Memphis about 5:30. I had enough time to go back to Graceland, take a shower, put on my uniform, and go to work. So I got back out to Graceland that night, and he comes down the hall snapping his fingers, and he's feeling his oats. He's had all day to sleep. I've been up since Sunday morning. No sleep. Sunday, all day Sunday, Sunday night, all day Monday. Worked like a dog on the floor because I was the supervisor. And went out to Graceland that night. He comes down the hall snapping his fingers and feeling really good. And I said, I'm going to give you your medicine. I'm going to check your blood pressure. Then you turn around and go right back down that hall where you came from because I'm going to bed. And I said, if you wake me up tonight, you be sure it's really for something important. And he said, yes, ma'am. And so he ordered his own breakfast up, and he ate it in his room by himself. And by the time he got back there, I was almost asleep. And I slept all night. He never bothered me. Let me sleep all night.
He owed you that.
He did. I told him he did. He was funny. He was, without a doubt, the nicest guy I've ever known in my life.
Well, fans look at him like he's a superhero and all, above everybody else. What would fans be surprised to know about Elvis?
That he was just human, just perfectly human.
Do you recall the last time you saw him alive?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
He called me at 2 o'clock one morning and asked me, it was just a few days before he died, and he said, I don't feel good, would you come out here? He always told me, he always said, you know, Miss Cocke, when I feel good, I like these tricky young nurses around me, but when I feel bad, I want you. And it wasn't the first time he'd called me at 2 o'clock in the morning, but he called me at 2 o'clock that morning. I lived in Raleigh. He said, I need you. I said, okay. So I got up and I started dressing. My husband said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to Graceland. Elvis needs me. So I went on out there and stayed with him for about 4.5 hours. He didn't look good. He was feeling bad. And I said, what's the matter, honey? And he said, I just needed you to come out here. And I sat on the side of the bed, reached over and put my hand on his arm, stayed there. We didn't talk much, but I was there for 4.5 hours. And finally he said, I'm okay now. He said, you go home and go to sleep. And I did. And the next time I saw him was in the emergency room. And when I walked in, I knew he was already dead. They were doing a code, and I asked them to please stop. And they stopped for a minute, restarted. And I said, Dr. Nick, don't do this to him anymore. And then I was at Graceland the whole time of his funeral. And Vernon wanted me there. I went out there the next day, and I didn't go out there that night. I went out there the next day. They had just brought his body home. And so I had my private time with him. And then Vernon wanted me to stay that night for a while. And then it became just before it got dark. He said, you go home before it gets dark, so I won't worry about it. She said, call back and let me know that I got home okay, because I lived in Raleigh. So I did, and then I was out there the next morning, and I was with the family the whole time, and sat with the family. And when we got back to Graceland, Vernon was sitting at the dining room table, and he said, Miss Cocke, come in here and sit with me for a few minutes, would you? And I went in and sat down. I said, what's the matter, honey? And he said, he was concerned about some of the bad things that were being said about Elvis. I said, let me tell you something. Those of us that know Elvis and love him, we're not going to pay any attention to that. The rest of them don't matter. That's all I could tell you. We sat there about 20 minutes talking, and then we got up and we went back in the back bedroom where Grandma and Delta and Nash was, and Priscilla was back there, and sat back there for a while and visited.
Well, can you tell me a little bit about your book?
Well, I had never set out to write a book. We were going to church one Sunday, and Bob said, it was about 8 weeks after he died, and I said, it seems so funny not to be going to Graceland anymore. He said, well, you should write down your memories while you are young enough to remember. So that's 2 parts to that. So I did, and put them in a camphor chest. And sometime later, somebody said something about, you need to write a book. And I said, well, I've written my memories down. It was a guy from University of Memphis. I said, I've written my memories down. And he said, well, could I read them? And I said, sure. And so he came back and he said, we need to publish this. And I said, I didn't write it for publication. He said, yeah, but we need to publish it.